Starting a couple. All right. Hey, everybody. Hello there. This is Chris, your host. Sorry, starting a couple minutes late tonight. My fault. Just running a little bit slower than I expected. I'm just feeling a little tired. You know what that is? I'll tell you exactly what that is. And then we can sort of get into the meat of the show. It's good to see you all, first of all. Happy to be here. I got my COVID booster a couple days ago now. And overall, I feel pretty good right now. First day after it, I did sort of feel sick for about 24 hours, but I was still able to suck it up enough to go into work. The next day, which was yesterday, I felt almost 100%, just dragging a tiny bit with like a little bit of a headache, and that was about it. Today, I feel really good, just a little bit tired, so I actually, I was just like, I can't help it. I'm going to take a nap. I'm going to take a nap in the afternoon, and I set an alarm. I thought I'd have enough time to get ready for this, but just running a little bit slow, so sort of catching me, like waking up right now and getting it together. But anyway, just giving you a little background on exactly where I am. Again, I'm Chris. I'm the host of Comic Tropes, but this show is called The Weekly Spinner Rack, a live show I do every week where I'm going to take a quick look at the books that I read this week, give you my thoughts on them, and then we're going to get into drawing something together and taking your questions. But let's see. Hello to people like James, Andrew, Antonio, my sister Jean, Aldi, Sir Mr. Howell, Tavia, A-Man, Black Phoenix, Steve. Lovely to see so many familiar names. Sincerely appreciate your support, folks. I'm excited because basically I need a few thousand more viewable hours on this channel, and I'll be able to monetize it, which is kind of nice. And I do have something I'm planning on releasing on this channel, like as an extra content on Thanksgiving Day. So I think I should have it finished edited by then. I got a few other things too. Gonna interview somebody this coming week. That'll be exciting. Comics pro that a lot of people out there will know. And yeah, I'll have a new Comic Tropes as well this coming Sunday. So, been able to stay with a regular weekly schedule, which feels good. So, let's talk about some of the comics that I've read this week, and we can sort of discuss comic book news and thoughts and opinions. First one I read this week was, I had read the first 2 issues of Superman, Son of Kal-El, and then I wasn't sure if I wanted to read the rest or not, and anyway, I went to the comic book shop, and they had the other issues up to date, so I picked them up. Issues 3, 4, and 5. And I'm enjoying it. I think I'll stick with this title a little bit. I haven't read Superman in a while, so I didn't really realize that I guess he doesn't have his secret identity anymore. He sort of came out to the world as Superman. And so this is the adventures of his son, Jonathan Kent. And Superman has basically left Earth to go help some other people. And so his son is now the main Superman of the world. But people also know who he is. And what's interesting is his sort of arch enemy is the president of another country who's been genetically modifying his citizens, but they have like good PR. They're saying like, oh no, of course we're not. But like Jonathan Kent, Superman knows better. This issue got a lot of publicity in the news because, maybe you heard about this, maybe you didn't. Jonathan has made a new friend, and this friend is more than a friend, as we find out. Yeah, so that was a pretty famous moment. This Superman is bisexual. Of course, if you say Superman is bisexual, Superman is gay, that's going to make news. Just an easy talking point that especially like a lot of conservative TV shows can latch onto, because everybody knows Superman. What? No, Superman's not gay. Well, this isn't the Superman we know. No, that Clark Kent is married to Lois Lane. This is a different Superman. It's interesting. I like this character of John Kent quite a bit. He's very idealistic, but is trying to focus on issues like he works on things like more like natural disasters, problems that the environment has caused. He works on human rights issues, and is just a really kind, decent person. I don't know that I necessarily get from like this potential boyfriend character. He's interesting. He's a journalist. He's likable enough. He's kind of nerdy and shy, but he's like a really good journalist. He also turns out to have powers. He can turn intangible. He can't get hurt. Well, that's actually a pretty good power to have if your boyfriend is somebody like Superman with some dangerous enemies. I don't know that I necessarily see him as like a long-term epic relationship of any kind. Maybe more just like something that this young character is just experimenting with, but I kind of find that realistic. Anyway, I like the issues that they tackle, and I really like this art. I'd never seen anything by this artist, Timms. Well, let me check the first name again, because I wasn't super familiar. Let me look at a different issue too. Really good artwork, really good. Expressive characters, great detail on like these action scenes and stuff. Like some fantastic angles. Like, I don't know, I really like this art quite a bit. Everything about it is well done. I'm just trying to find out. John Timms apparently is the artist. Nobody listed as an inker, so I guess John Timms is doing both like the pencils and the inks. So I will say, no matter what you think of the story, the art is fantastic. Like it, I see that guy going places. He's going places. Here's the next issue that I read. Orcs in Space. It's pretty funny. It's like the title implies. There are these 3 dumb orcs that accidentally end up on a spaceship and sort of end up in a world almost where there's something like the Star Trek's Federation. And those guys are like by the book and rules, and these guys are just rule breakers by their nature. They're kind of like the Three Stooges. So, yeah, it's pretty silly stuff. You have to be in the mood to appreciate things like the Three Stooges, like I just said. Lots of sort of slapstick, but I kind of do like it. I really find the artwork charming, very clear to read, deceptively simple. Like this looks simple, but instead it's just really easy to follow along and understand who's who. Some of the jokes are also like really clever, and some of them are really dumb. Okay, so these orcs go to like this, we'll call it a space station, and they're trying to find something. And they're like, we're here to retrieve the origin plate from and he says Starbleep craft number, and there's this huge, long number, okay? That's just funny because of how dumb it is, like how long the number is. And this guy that they're like worried about, he's like all angry. He's like, oh, is that right? No worries, I'll bring it down. And he like is really helpful and everything. And then this like guy who's kind of like Mo from the Three Stooges just knocks him out because he's just like an angry orc. It's dumb, but I don't know, it's funny. I can't say that it's anything like super innovative or anything. If you're looking for like sort of a humor book, this might be along the lines of something like a Gru the Wanderer, kind of dumb jokes, but with good artwork. So I don't know that I'd say that it's that good, but it's also only like 5 issues in, and Gru lasted a really long time. Gru is like one of my favorites. So even making the comparison is friendly. It's good. It's so far I'd say both, Superman and Orcs in Space, good. I haven't said anything yet is great. They're good. They're good. Let's see. Eat the Rich. I like horror comics, and that's sort of what this is by Boom Studios. Two types of horror there. One is sort of class warfare, you could say, like how bad the wealthy treat the working class, but with specific characters, not just in general. And then the second bit of horror is cannibalism, because basically this really rich family here, really a series of rich families, they sign all their hired help, their nannies, their butlers, their maids, their valets, all that good stuff. They hire them to some contracts and pay them really, really well. They give them great wages, incredible benefits. They take care of their families, but there's a part of their contract that agrees that once their time of service is up, they're going to get killed and eaten by these rich people. And it seems like once you take a bite of this, you then have... there's something supernatural potentially involved. Like, once you have this hunger, you always want to eat. You're always hungry. And the only thing that satisfies it temporarily is eating that. So there's that sort of weird class warfare. And specifically, we follow this girl, Jo, as in Josephine. She's dating this guy from college, Astor. He's the guy with the rich family, and she just sort of wants to fit in and everything. And she started to eat with the family. She hasn't killed yet, but she's eaten, and she's trying to fit in. But she knows that this is like just horrible. Doesn't know how she's going to survive, and she has this really close relationship she starts forming with one of the nannies that works on the island, Petal. And Petal took the job because she has like some sort of I forget. I don't think they've explained exactly what the disease is, but it's something that would eventually be fatal, like kind of young in life. So Petal has decided that while she's alive, she can get good medical care, so she's not in pain, and her family will be very taken care of. So that's why she took the job. But they apparently they sort of fall for each other. And so, like, this girl, Jo, is really confused about her place in the world. She tries to stand up to the family in this issue, in issue 4, and the father of the household comes at her with a knife. So it's going in some weird places. The reason I like this, I guess, is because I don't know what to expect issue to issue. I can't quite say that the main character, Jo, is all good. She's definitely a super flawed individual. So I don't know that I'm even rooting for her so much as like trying to understand where the whole situation will go, and just hoping that like she somehow does bring down this really corrupt and awful family. I don't know if she will inadvertently or on purpose or what. So could be interesting. I see. King in the North was asking if that Superman is the same one as the half clone from Lex Luthor. No, this is different. This is Superman and Lois Lane's actual son. Anyway, moving forward, this one I liked quite a bit. So far, I'd say these are good. This isn't great, but it's one that I've enjoyed a little bit more than those. Refrigerator Full of Heads, a sequel to the horror comic Basket Full of Heads, where essentially what happened, there's this mystical Norse axe, and if you cut off somebody's head, it doesn't kill them. The head stays alive. This couple somehow like learned about it and has recovered it from like the ocean depths, and in the course of this issue some bikers have been like sent to retrieve it from them by somebody else who must know about it, but this couple fights back. They cut off these bikers' heads, which is pretty gory, but like it's sort of cartoonish too, because they don't die. They just like sort of keep complaining and talking and stuff. It's a mix of horror with sort of over the top comedy. Something like maybe you'd see in like Evil Dead, the Evil Dead movies maybe. Like here's one guy that survived, and he's trying to like he's just sort of like biting grass to move his head forward, and like he almost gets hit by like a truck. And he's like, I guess I'm going to go cross country. So he's just like this head trying to like make his way across this island town. Anyway, I, again, don't know exactly where it's going, but towards the end of the story, we see whoever like the criminals are that tried to hurt the couple, they've abducted this lady, and this lady is the main character from the original book, Basket Full of Heads. So anyway, they're trying... There's people that are trying to get at this horrible mystical axe. The art is good. It's a weird, violent story, but it's fun. This one's really fun. It's not like all tragedy and grimdark or anything like that. So that's a book that I give a pretty strong recommendation to. Here's one of my favorite things that I discovered recently. I'd always heard pretty good things about Ms. Marvel, especially the original run written by G. Willow Wilson. But I'd never read it. Last week I picked up the first trade paperback of Ms. Marvel, and I liked it a lot. I flew through it. So this is the second one, and I really like it. Ms. Marvel is 16-year-old in Jersey City, from immigrant parents, Pakistani. She's a good girl, bit of a nerd, little bit rebellious. Just wants to explore the world. She accidentally gets, superpowers, where she can sort of like, she can grow, shrink, and not just like Ant-Man, but more like change her body shape. So mostly she'll make like her fists really big, but sometimes, she can like make her legs really tall. If she needs to, she can like stretch kind of thin. So it's not exactly like growing and shrinking, but it's also not exactly like Mr. Fantastic, like stretching. It's more like she can grow and shrink parts of her body, and it requires quite a bit of concentration. And her arch enemy is kind of hilarious. He's this, let me see if I can find it here. He's called the Inventor, and he's a mad scientist, but specifically, he's like a half-bird man. It's so funny. And in this comic, Ms. Marvel gets sort of a sidekick, sort of a pet. She gets the dog Lockjaw, who's been in the Marvel Comics Inhumans for a long time. He's a gigantic bulldog that can teleport, and the Inhumans send Lockjaw to basically watch over her and make sure she doesn't get in over her head, because Ms. Marvel is an Inhuman. That's where her powers come from. So charming. She loves this dog. The artwork is also like pretty silly, but it totally fits tonally. That's what's good about this. Tonally consistent. Good dialogue. Each character sounds different from each other. There's some real different personalities going on here, so that they feel different. And there's always a good mix of action and personal drama. If you've ever liked any of those sort of teen characters, like Spider-Man when he was young, even things like, I'm thinking of other teen characters that Marvel's had that they've done pretty good job with. Ghost Rider, Darkhawk, what else have they had? Nova in the 70s, Ultimate Spider-Man, Miles Morales as well. Any of those characters, like Ms. Marvel does it really well. It's a good mix of all sorts of weird personal drama, stuff that we can relate to with family trouble and school trouble, and just trying to find your place in the world, combined with like really cool, exciting action. And she isn't like that great at the superhero stuff all the time, so it's cool to follow her on this journey of trying to get better. Like, she's spying on the supervillains, and the mirrors ahead break, and she just falls in front of them. She takes some losses, so it isn't just like she's instantly like really great at this, but she's such a likable character. I really give this a strong recommendation. Ms. Marvel is so good. I totally get why this has become a quickly popular character. I even think it makes all the sense in the world why she's sort of using a previous superhero's name and a little bit the look. Her powers and stuff, she has nothing to do with the original Ms. Marvel. She's just a fan of superheroes. She writes a lot of fanfic. That's a totally believable character. One of her favorite superheroes is Captain Marvel. And since Captain Marvel is no longer using her old name of Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan decides to use it. I mean, she is a new character. That makes sense to use that name. It's not being used. Yeah, Kamala Khan is an Inhuman. I love it. I really, really like it. So that's been a fun discovery, because there's something like, I think, 10 trade paperbacks that the writer... 10. And I've only read 2 of them. So this will take me a while to sort of go through this run, but I'm expecting to keep enjoying it. Got some back issues. That's a back issue. Here's one I picked up that was really cool. I had this as a kid because I read Marvel Comics Presents since day one. But I'd sold almost all of my comics several years ago, like 8 years ago. I sold all my comics. So every once in a while I get a back issue that I used to have if I realize, you know what, that one meant something to me. And this one definitely did. The Weapon X ongoing storyline in this book by Barry Windsor Smith, so good, folks. This is like the first time we really got more than a hint at some of Wolverine's origins. And it doesn't tell us exactly who his parents were or anything like that, or exactly when he was born. What it tells us is just how he got his metal skeleton and claws, his adamantium. This is just the first chapter of that. And I think it was just really well done because it didn't quite take away any of his mystery. We still don't know his real name or anything. We just finally, this came out in 1991. And Wolverine had come out, when did he debut? I want to say it could be even the late 60s, like 68 or 69. He may have first come out. But he was out throughout the 70s. So it was about 2 decades in that we're finally getting even a piece of his origin. These days they've explained a lot more. And I would argue that there's a few things that make Wolverine popular. His look is iconic. Even with or without the costume, you can tell it's Wolverine. It's got a very distinct profile. Even in silhouette, you can tell his hair or his mask, his claws. Very identifiable, right? Great look. Second, personality. He's gruff. He's, a scrapper. He's, he added that bit of conflict that the X-Men team benefited from. You need to have at least one team member that doesn't quite fit in seamlessly. Add some, Hawkeye does it for early issues of the Avengers. You could argue that The Thing did it for early issues of Fantastic Four. Wolverine provided that for X-Men. That conflict, butting up against, not wanting to take Cyclops' orders without thinking about it, Anyway, Weapon X, just the story of how he got his adamantium. One cool thing about this also, Barry Windsor Smith, he didn't just draw this, he didn't just write this. No, he did everything on this. Look, all these, this was an anthology book, right? So here we've got things like writer, penciler, inker, letterer, colorist. Writer, penciler, inker, letter, colorist. Writer, layouts, pencils, inker, letter, colorist. For these 3 other stories, right? For this one, just by Barry Windsor Smith. Letterer, Jim Novak, and Barry Windsor Smith. So Barry Windsor Smith wrote this, illustrated it, colored it, even did a bunch of the lettering. Did everything. He got some help with the lettering, but everything else he did. This is very much one creator's singular vision, and it's great. He got Wolverine right. Barry Windsor Smith drew with a lot of detail, but not the same way that a lot of detail came from other artists at the time, like Art Adams or John Byrne. Certainly, I think he influenced a lot of the Image guys. I definitely think he influenced a lot of the Image guys. Steve is mentioning Wolverine was originally supposed to be a genetically altered Wolverine that was created by High Evolutionary. That was one idea for it. I'm glad they didn't go that direction. This is much better. The other 3 stories in this are really forgettable. There's nothing else special about this comic. Like, we've got a Shanna the She-Devil story, a Daredevil story that's pretty average. No offense to the creators. And Red Wolf. He's like a Native American superhero in the Marvel Universe. Pretty average art. Like, you look at that, and then you, like, flip to, a page of the Weapon X storyline, and it just doesn't compare. Like, this is so sort of, like, these aren't bad artists or anything like that, but just Barry Windsor Smith is on another level. I can't wait to do an episode someday really digging in to Barry Windsor Smith. Small spoiler for my end of the year top 10 list of 2021. One of my top 10 comics was by Barry Windsor Smith, Monsters. It took him something like 31 years to make that comic, and it just came out this year. So anyway, that was just sort of nostalgic in a way, but I'm a big fan of Barry Windsor Smith. He's a great artist. This was a great storyline. If you've never read it, I'm sure there's a trade collection of it. The Weapon X storyline is really, really interesting, told from several points of view of characters involved, and way more intricate than just Wolverine against Apocalypse or Mr. Sinister. It's about scientists really sort of abusing someone, experimenting without any ethics, and that's disturbing because a little bit of that is kind of real world. A hint who my interview is with? Sure, Girl Scouts. You could probably figure it out from that if you know who I'm talking about. Here's another weird back issue that I got. This issue is good, but this series quickly failed. It was called The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones, and it was by John Byrne, who was definitely a superstar at this point, but who also seems to have lost interest very quickly in this series. This didn't last very long. I don't know how many issues. It was only something I want to say 3 to 5 tops. But honestly, the drop in quality from this first issue, which is good, to the second issue, there's a big drop in quality. But this issue is good. Written and drawn by John Byrne, and it feels pretty much like Indiana Jones stuff. Booby traps, crossing the world to investigate a problem, dealing with all sorts of characters smugglers and ancient practitioners of a cult. It's really interesting. It feels very, very much like a good Indiana Jones setup. There's one thing in this though that I got a kick out of, folks. This first splash page. Take a close look at that and see, just in general, in terms of layout and stuff, does that look right to you? Or does it, the more you look at it, closely, these characters and stuff, does it sort of look off? Because it looked off to me, and I looked it up, and yeah, John Byrne played real fast and loose with this layout. This girl is something like 8 feet tall if we assume that the perspective in this is correct. I mean, because here's what gives it away. When we look at the floor tile patterns here, right? There's only about half a tile between Indiana Jones's foot and where this girl is standing, okay? About half a tile or so. And then there's also only about half a tile between the back of Indiana Jones's foot and Marcus. And yet, she's so much bigger than him, and he's so much bigger than that. So I started looking at the perspective lines here, lining it up. I'm okay, so this is obviously a 1-point perspective shot here, right? We follow all these lines, we get a point here or something, and then we've got these indices where where everything is crossing. So we should be able to form boxes, and characters' shoulders and elbows and things like that should be roughly in the same place for each one. Roughly. You know, of course, people are different heights, but roughly. But they don't. Like, the perspective on this does not line up. She's just way too tall for this. Or he should have had, like, you know, done different on the perspective. On top of that, then we look at this line at the top here for, like, the ceiling, right? And that doesn't even come close to matching the perspective grid on the floor. So even though this is technically 1-point perspective, it's flawed. These lines should all converge in 1 point, but they do not. And so it's weird. John Byrne, I always thought of as a really good artist, but he played fast and loose with this page. Yeah, some really strange decisions, honestly, at place here. And once I started looking at that, once you sort of notice a mistake and realize that an artist isn't flawless, right? Like, that if you look at them, you're seeing some mistakes. You start seeing more mistakes. I started like noticing, like, oh my God, look at these tangents. Tangents are where, like, you know, things are lining up that aren't necessarily intended to line up, but your eye starts making connections. Like, her head almost perfectly lines up with this line of the window in the door frame. She should definitely either, like, be a little under it or quite a bit over it to help, like, instead, like, we're seeing these lines and it almost, like, frames her head and draws your eye in more than it probably should. Then there's, like, weird decisions, like, this is like an outdoor window, but look at this. This is just like some sort of, like, TV static for a background. It's just like black and white speckles for outside. It looks very strange. Her head looks like it's touching the ceiling. Exactly. So it's very strange. Like, John Byrne is a good artist, but wow, like, just some strange things going on in this splash page. Also, when I looked at it, I was like Indiana Jones is, like, for practice, he's trying to use his whip to, like, knock a cigarette out of, like, a student's mouth. That doesn't feel in character to me. That just doesn't, like, I don't think he'd do something that risky for the heck of it. So yeah, I do like this issue. Just a very weird first page. Beyond that, this had a lot of potential, but it really didn't become, like, a popular ongoing series or anything. It just has, like, one real strong issue that gives us kind of the possibilities, gives us a hint at, like, what could have been, and that's about it. Is that a big door, or is Marcus, like, 4 feet tall? Maybe both. A couple weeks ago, I was doing horror books, and a lot of people said that one of their favorite horror books was by Scott Snyder and Jock. It was a book called Witches, with a Y, Wytches. I read it. It was decent. I didn't find it, like, quite as scary as a lot of people seem to think. I was like, okay, I get why it's popular. Wasn't exactly for me. I wouldn't have made my top 10 horror comics. But once I got that and was talking about that, going like, yeah, it was okay. It was okay. It wasn't great. People said, well, if you want to see something really good by that same writer-artist team, there's this Batman story called The Black Mirror. Pick that up. So I did, and it's true. This is a very good Batman story. This is when Dick Grayson, the original Robin, is Batman. Like, for a while, Bruce Wayne had handed the mantle over. And he investigates some crimes that involve an underworld auction house that sells off Batman's villains' gear, we'll call it. Because, you know, they're always getting arrested and stuff, but there's, like, there's some corrupt cops that have been selling it off, and then these people have been auctioning it off to the wealthy. So they have access to, like, you know, poison ivy's growing plants, and Mad Hatter's mind control technology, Killer Croc's genetic serum that turns people into sort of like alligator type men. it's a good mystery, and it's creepy and disturbing. There's a lot of weird body horror stuff in it. So I would agree. This is pretty darn good. I'm only halfway through the story. I read the first sort of arc, which is what I was talking about just now, but then there's a couple other following arcs. This gives me about like 11 issues of comic book to read. So I've still got a little bit to go, but I would agree. This was a really fun. It was interesting to read a different type of Batman, one that's not quite so... oh, I am the night. I am vengeance. He's Dick Grayson's definitely a little more of a normal guy, down to earth, not quite so driven and weird. Last thing I picked up was, this was sort of spur of the moment, but it was it's almost Christmas time, and I saw this old Gladstone Disney comic that was specifically an anthology of its Christmas stories. And the thing that really sold me was just that it was a cover by Carl Barks. He's my favorite artist for any Disney stuff. He created all the characters, like Uncle Scrooge. He created, all the supporting characters in the world of the Ducks. He didn't create Donald Duck. Did he create his nephews? He may have created his nephews. Anyway, so this is just a bunch of stories like that, and it's all Christmas themed. They're not all by Carl Barks, and they're not all, they're not all Donald Duck and his nephew's stories. They're all sorts of Disney characters. But I love Christmas stories. I really do. And Disney used to produce some really cool, interesting, funny comics for a long time, guys. Like, it was ridiculously popular. Like, how popular were Disney comics? They were so popular that during World War II, Italy, of course, was one of the Axis nations, and, against America, they tried to stop importing, American entertainment. The people would not let it stand. They wanted their Mickey Mouse comics. Mickey Mouse comics were still imported to Italy somehow throughout World War II. That's my understanding, which is just bonkers that it was that popular that they were like, yeah, we'll let those comics come in while we'll figure that one out later. Anyway, just a fun, weird thing. And that was everything I read this week. Always curious to hear what you are reading currently and like what stands out as like a top comic. I'm trying to read a little bit more superhero stuff to see if something catches my interest, because obviously I'm reading a lot more things like crime, horror, sci-fi. I'm always reading a lot of comics. I'm always reading back issues, so like I get my superhero fix there, but I'm not reading a lot of current ongoing Marvel DC superhero stuff. So always looking for recommendations there if you've got something that you're like, this is great. Do they eat turkey in that issue? No. Good question, Andrew. But I did do a small episode a couple years ago about a Donald Duck comic book where they do eat turkey on Thanksgiving. And I guess my understanding is that while, Mickey and Donald and Goofy are anthropomorphic animals, they still live in a world where they eat small animals. Like, there's stories where Minnie Mouse goes like, eek, a mouse, because like a tiny mouse is like running across the kitchen floor. Yeah, it's kind of weird. You can't think about it too much, but yeah. Have I tried Tom Taylor's Nightwing run? No, but I have heard about Bruno Redondo's artwork. I've flipped through some of those Nightwing issues. It's pretty cool. Daniel Carhoonan has an interesting piece of information here. Donald Duck's nephews were created by Ted Osborne and Al Taliaferro. So that's cool. Got it. Anyway, today I was going to draw. I got like just a real loose outline here of a pose, and I'm going to fine tune that with y'all. I'm going to draw Grendel. Grendel was or still sort of is, a character created by a guy named Matt Wagner. Started coming out in 1982. Indie comic. Grendel is the name of a villain. Actually, a number of villains. But originally, a man whose name was Hunter Rose came to be known as Grendel. He was a genius. He was a supreme athlete. And nothing in life gave him much of a challenge. So he slowly became like this criminal, like an incredibly successful assassin who also slowly took over the underworld, organized crime. So it's a story told from the perspective of a villain, very much in the fashion of famous European villain like Fantomas, who was a French villain, gentleman villain, you could say. And Fantomas led to some other derivative villain stories like Diabolique from Italy. Grendel is sort of in that vein. Very interesting character. He does have some morals, but he's not a hero or anything. In fact, the hero of the piece, bizarrely, is this sort of werewolf, Native American who was cursed like 300 years ago to be some sort of like man-wolf, and he's called Argent. And because he's like, cursed to live like that, he slowly devotes his life to good and helps the police with like big cases, and is devoted to tracking down who Grendel is. It's a weird epic story. And then like after that, the first big story arc following Hunter Rose, eventually other people take on the Grendel identity, and Grendel sort of becomes synonymous with people becoming obsessed with aggression. So it becomes a metaphorical story over time, and it starts spreading it even into the far future, where the world has been corrupted ecologically, like environmental collapse has led to all sorts of political upheaval, and there's even like sort of stormtrooper soldiers at one point that are called the Grendels, and it follows Grendel Prime, like this one guy who's trying to sort of do some good in the world. It's interesting stuff. If you've never read it, Grendel is pretty darn interesting. It's really, really unique. The art resembling a bit of Japanese manga. Well, it depends on who's drawing it. Matt Wagner drew the original stuff in the early 80s, because it was pretty indie. But eventually he just mostly hired other artists, and he would just write the stories. So it sort of depends. Yeah, some of them probably did have a manga flavor to them. Very interesting character, though. Very interesting. Very simple outfit. Just sort of dressed almost just like a ninja. Nothing too fancy there. Big eyes on the front. So some people, for a while used to think, hey, are you drawing Venom? No, this is Grendel. You don't know Grendel, you heathen? Anyway. Just sort of blocking out what I want to do. But I'd love to take any of your questions as well. So if you've got any questions, now is the time to lay that stuff on me, and I'll do my best to take it from there. Should also take a look at what kind of comic news there was this week, and if there's anything interesting, we'll start talking about that as well. Is there any sort of Beowulf character involved? Not as such. It is not derived from the Beowulf legend so much as obviously one of the chapters of Beowulf sort of follows it from Grendel's point of view, or not even that so much as there's a novelist that created sort of a modern adaptation of it that was told from Grendel's point of view. So I think that was Matt Wagner's inspiration was telling something from a villain's point of view, which you have to understand in 1982 was still a pretty original concept in comics. You know, there was no ongoing books like Venom or Joker. Marvel and DC had each given like a shot or two at like telling things from villains' point of views, but it never really went anywhere. They never really quite committed to it full on. And so yeah, like this is definitely a pretty new thing when it was first coming out. He has a weapon that's like a fork, but that's like got like a bladed fork that has electricity. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, bro. I'm trying to think of like what was any big comic book news this week. I guess one of the things was that like depending on how many of you head out for, you know, comics regularly, a lot of the stuff from Diamond Distribution came late to a lot of places because they got hacked with malware this past week. So like a lot of their distribution stuff got delayed by at least a couple days. That was a little frustrating. I like to, you know, keep up to date on the comics so that I can like sort of talk about them weekly here with all of you. But what do you call it? I was able to go to the comic book store a second time. I go to a comic book store that's not exactly close, but I was getting my COVID booster shot, like I said, and so yeah, I was able to head out and pick up my late comics. Have you considered doing a comic tropes on Richard Corbin? I'm certainly aware of him, and I guess I've considered it a little. I don't know exactly how I'd approach that yet, so I don't have any firm plans at this time, but never say never. It's definitely something that could easily happen. Definitely. So, we shall see. Good question. The closest comic book store is 45 minutes away from me. Yeah, I would say that mine is, like, it's not the closest comic book store, but the closest good comic store is also about 45 minutes from me. So it's not that close. How are you feeling boosted, Chris? I feel decent now. Antonio asks if I read Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow by Tom King and Bilquis Evely. No. Is it good? I have not read it. I haven't really heard much about that one either. Sorry. I did read Nemesis by Mark Miller. Not really a fan. Trying too hard to be edgy, I thought. A little too hard. Yeah, didn't love that one, I have to admit. Still, please never feel shy about sharing your recommendations, because I am always looking. It's like True Grit, but in space. What's your take on the Saga cosplay in the new Taco Smell commercial? Oh, I know what you're talking about, and I was wondering if that was intentional. Yeah, there's a Taco Bell commercial, and there's like two people at like a subway stop in cosplay, and they do look a lot like the characters from Saga, but I didn't know if I was like, is that just me, or was it intentional, or is that like a production designer sneaking it in? I don't know the story behind that commercial. I would be very curious to know if that's intentional or not. I don't know. So if anybody else knows, let me know. Have I read I Hate Fairyland? No. Is that one by, oh, who's that guy? Something with a last name that's something like SK something or other. Can't come up with it. I know the comic you're talking about. I've not read it. You tell me if it's any good. Haven't read the new Moon Knight series. This is why I'm looking for recommendations, guys. Haven't read most of these superhero comics today. Have I been watching the Gaiman McFarlane lawsuit episodes of Kayfabe? Between those and your live streams, Mondays are good for Comics YouTube. That's awesome. I've seen them in my stream. I haven't watched them. I'm pretty familiar. Like, I always kept up to date with that case. So I think I know it pretty darn well, but I would definitely be curious to hear the boys' take on that. I was very happy for them that they both got invited to be guests at the... I don't know, some Hawaii Comic-Con. That's the difference between me being just the comic book YouTuber and then being comic book YouTubers that are also, like, active professionals in the industry. Like, they get invited to some pretty cool things. Man, that would be incredible. But then you have to, be able to host a panel and stuff like that, and that sounds, I don't know, that sounds a little intimidating to me. All right, let's start laying in some inks here, because I think I've got, the broad strokes of this mapped out. And let me also just, take a look and see if I can remind myself some, if there was any other comic book news this week that could, take me down a comic book story tangent. Oh, I know, of course. Yeah, the new Spider-Man trailer came out. But if I talked about that, that's mostly just speculation about, is this character, is that character going to be in it? And I'd rather just sort of watch it and be surprised, I think. So, yeah, I'm not going to really get into that. But if you watch this channel, you probably did see that I made a little bit of a trolly type of post. I posted about 30 minutes before the new trailer was going to come out my reaction to the trailer. Obviously, that was just me acting as though I saw the trailer. That was kind of fun. That was just me being a weirdo. Fortunately, most people definitely understood and liked the joke. You know what? I'm going to actually white something out. I don't want to have his thumb in the front like this. I did see Ghostbusters Afterlife. I thought it was decent. It's not giving it a whole lot for me to say that I thought it was the second best Ghostbusters movie, because I love the original Ghostbusters. It's a very funny movie. This one wasn't really quite as funny, but it also wasn't really trying to be quite as funny. It was definitely a little bit more of a family drama mixed with the sci-fi type concepts and some more light humor, I thought. And it did fine. Probably leaned a little too heavily into some of the nostalgia stuff in my opinion. I don't think it needed to do as much as it did with all the nostalgia stuff, but it is what it is. It was I thought still decent. I've seen some, I think overall it's getting pretty strong reviews. I think the Red Letter Media guys, who I respect but don't always agree 100% with, I respect them a lot. I think that they make the best YouTube show on the channel, on the site, I mean. Yeah, I don't think they liked it too much, and I totally understand where they're coming from and why, but I still, in the moment, enjoyed it for the most part. We'll see. I'm still really close to it. I only saw it less than a week ago, so my opinion could sort of change with time. But for now, I kind of liked it. No, haven't seen anything about Wheel of Time. Sorry. Goonies meets Close Encounters. Goonies meets Close Encounters. Yeah, I see some stuff like that. I could understand that take. Hope this looks good once I've got some inks laid into it. But I'm having fun, and it's fun to talk to all of you, so thank you all again for being here. That means a lot to me. They were so jaded. Mike seemed to enjoy most of it, but just let Jay and Rich be miserable. Maybe. I didn't disagree with, like, most of the points they were making. I just thought, like, at the end of the day that I was willing to forgive some of that nostalgia stuff more than they seemed to be willing to. But, you know, they have to be critics for that stuff. Like, it's just like I have to sort of be critic for a lot of the comics that I read. And every once in a while I look back and I think I'm either too lenient on something or too hard on something. Like, it's a tough path. It's a tough path to figure out where you want to stand. Yeah, that's true. It is interesting that they haven't rebooted Goonies. But at the same time, like, Goonies was to such a degree, like, about the actors, like, that they chose, like, more than the story itself. You ignored that reaction video. It wasn't a real reaction video, King. Like, I did it before the trailer ever came out. It wasn't real. But that's okay. That's why I said that there's no spoilers in the video description. But I didn't expect everybody to check it out. I knew that some people would be like, well, I don't want to get spoiled. And I was just doing something for fun. It's more of a joke about, like, what all those React trailers can be like. I don't see the nostalgia viewpoint aside from the original cast returning in the third act having the same villain. Kind of like being upset Blofeld comes back in a Bond film. Yeah, it didn't bother me as much as it bothered them and possibly some other critics as well. And just for the record, like, I won't go into too many details about it. In fact, I don't think I'll go into too much of anything else about it because a lot of people probably still haven't seen it. But it worked for me overall. It worked for me. I thought it was worth going to the theater for. But I also, just to be clear, I love going to the movies. So I just love going to the movies. Like, I'm probably going to go see, what's the one coming out this week? Resident Evil. And I don't think that looks good, but I got something called the AMC Pass, and I think you pay like $20 a month, and you get to see up to 3 movies a week. So I'll sort of go to some not great movies sometimes, just because I like going to the movies. What artist comes to mind when you think of the best panel-to-panel fight scenes? In recent times, I would say that one that I really like, because I think he does some innovative action, very clear storytelling, is Daniel Warren Johnson. I think he stands out to me a lot. In terms of, like, some of the more classic storytellers that have been out there, I think David Mazzucchelli always did a great job. Frank Miller on stuff like Daredevil did a great job. Like, really well-paced, good detail. I thought, like, David Aja did a great job on Hawkeye. That was one that I just, like, reviewed recently, so that's still kind of fresh in my mind. Yeah. Good fun question. Can we please go light on the Ghostbusters Afterlife spoilers, guys? Yeah, I'll stop talking about anything about it. That's totally reasonable. Weird Al watched Drake's video. Oh, I never saw that. I would watch that. Weird Al's a funny guy. I sincerely think that. I don't always think each of his songs are hilarious, but I do think that like he is a very funny, genuine guy, and I like a lot of his songs. I like Weird Al. Weird Al is a treasure. And boy, he looks fantastic for his age. I'll say that as well. He looks a lot younger than he actually is. In my opinion. Maybe I've got a skewed point of view because I'm getting older. I don't know. Let me get a different brush for some of this. Thought I had... Oh, maybe I don't. Thought I had a thicker brush for this. Try this one. This one's on its last legs. That's a pretty feeble line. I'll have to redo that. I have a feeling the new Resident Evil is going to be better than the other movies, and I feel like people don't like it because of the marketing or fans like the older ones. Beats me, man. I don't think that the old ones necessarily have the most hardcore fans. I mean, the movies did fine, but I don't think anyone out there was like, yeah, I love the Mila Jovovich Resident Evils. Like, they were fine. I don't think that like they were... The first one was pretty good. After that, I like the fourth one for some reason too. I saw Weird Al tour in 3 years. I saw 3 Weird Al tours in 3 years. Yeah, nice. I read all of Ultimate Spider-Man. I love the ending, but hate it turns out both Norman and Peter come on back in Miles' series. Okay. Jack asks, hey Chris, love your channel. Who doesn't? Just wondering what your favorite TV show was. Oh, just all-time favorite TV show? At this point, I'd probably have to argue that it's Breaking Bad. I thought that was so well done. What a show. Yeah. Overall, I'll say Breaking Bad. But others that like I've come back to and respect would be things like Buffy and Angel. I still like quite a bit. Generally Star Trek, although Star Trek can have some clunkers. Like I like Star Trek. I like what else? I know there's others. Sopranos. Sopranos, I think stands the test of time quite well. I'm sure there's some others that I'm just not thinking of right at this minute. Oh, generally Doctor Who. Yeah, Breaking Bad is incredible. That really is something special. Hello, Sean. What's my favorite Trek? I think I have to say Deep Space Nine. Kind of surprised that it's Deep Space Nine, but it is. I just really like that was like one of the first Star Treks to really build an ongoing type of story. And they'd still have, the occasional fill-in episodes of like, oh, the transporter turned me into half a bug. But in general, they did some really interesting stuff with Deep Space Nine. They really did a lot of character development. My sister says love Ted Lasso. I've heard nothing but good things about that, Gene. I just don't have, what do you call it, Apple TV? Yeah, I don't have Apple TV, so haven't seen that. But I'd love to watch it at some point. It looks really good. I liked original Star Trek. I like the characters of original Star Trek. I tend to like them in the movies a little bit more, just because it was still kind of like, the show, it's just a little dated now. But it's not bad. I don't think I've seen all of it, to be honest. I don't think I've seen every episode of the original series. I'm pretty sure I haven't. I don't think I've seen all the episodes of Next Generation either, and I don't think I've seen any of Voyager. I've never watched Voyager, so I can't pretend like I'm the biggest Trekker in the world. But I do like Next Generation a lot. I do like the original cast a lot, and I like what do you call it? I liked Enterprise. Hated how that show ended, but I liked Enterprise, I have to admit. Just one of the worst season finales I've literally ever seen in my life. Just so bad that I've really never wanted to go back and watch it. But I enjoyed it when it was on. And only in the last couple weeks, my fiance just did something nice just to surprise me. She knows I like Star Trek. She signed me up for, or she signed up for Paramount Plus. So I binged Picard, and I really liked it. I've gotten through a season and a half of Discovery. I've still got a season and a half left to go. And I've watched a few episodes of Lower Decks, and I really enjoy all of it. I really do. So much fun. So, Star Trek can be a lot of things. If you know me before I started doing comic tropes, you may know that I, for a long time, did a web comic called Star Trek Problems. Not a great title, but basically I would just sort of poke fun at the cliches and character foibles of various Star Trek shows, and I made 150 comics of that or something like that online. I keep forgetting this. Mandela Butterfly, how can you forget? Here, I'll help you remember. Here's a helpful way to remember my show that goes weekly on Mondays at this time. I keep forgetting. That would be how Michael McDonald would sing it about it, but when he's forgetting the lyrics to his own song. I keep forgetting. Hey, Twin Peaks. Somebody just said, what are my thoughts on Twin Peaks? That's a show I actually love quite a bit. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Season 2 does have some pretty bad weakness, but in general, Twin Peaks is pretty awesome. Twin Peaks is something special. Love Twin Peaks. There's shows that I liked but didn't really like how it petered out. I would say that those would include a lot of shows. X-Files, Battlestar Galactica, Lost. Those were all shows that for a long time I really enjoyed them, but didn't really like how they ended things. I specifically really didn't like how Lost ended. It was just not for me. I know a lot of people like it, but it just wasn't for me. Not trying to create controversy or arguments in the chat or anything, but I was disappointed in it to such a degree that I've never gone back to rewatch any of that. Battlestar Galactica, a little less so. X-Files, though, there's a show that I loved, but very clearly never had a clear ending in mind, so it just kind of kept getting worse and worse and wouldn't stop. My biggest disappointment was the initial sort of premise of why Fox Mulder wanted to, look into X-Files cases was to find his missing sister, who he remembered being kidnapped by aliens as a kid. But like when they finally, like in something like season like 7 out of 9, before they had like 2 other seasons, they finally like came up with this weird thing where she had been like abducted by a child murderer, and I was just like, it was just such a, it wasn't like at the finale or anything, it was like in the middle of a season. They just gave us like this really depressing end to everything, and he was just like, yep, I got the closure I needed. And I was like, what? I sure didn't. That was a terrible way to wrap up the Samantha storyline, Samantha Mulder. So X-Files really, at that point, what was still cool about X-Files was at a certain point after about season 5, the mythology episodes stopped being the ones that were exciting, and you started appreciating just the standalone weird mystery of the week, like Monster of the Week's episodes. And you'd just be like, yeah, that was a cool weird Monster of the Week. That worked. Got any impressions for us tonight? Any show with a good... I'll think about impressions. Any show with a good finale you liked. Probably one of the reasons why I love Breaking Bad so much is a fantastic finale. Probably that one has the best finale of any show I've watched. Like, really gave me everything I think I wanted out of... without knowing for sure what I wanted out of it. Like, they delivered it. Sopranos also gave me the ending that I wanted. Great ending there. The final episode of Sesame Street, where they sort of wake up in a post-apocalyptic world and Big Bird realizes that like only he and Oscar were able to survive. I would say that that's a pretty amazing finale. You wouldn't have expected that out of a kids TV show. But Sesame Street had a good, finale, that post-apocalyptic season finale. I'm sure there's other, this is more of almost a guilty pleasure, but I like the sitcom Friends, and I liked how that one ended. That was a decent ending. I have not been reading Moon Knight, so if anybody can tell me what's good about it, I'm listening. MASH had a good finale, and Mary Tyler Moore too. I'm sure they did. I didn't watch those shows. I was a little too young to, I haven't seen those. Oh yeah, I like that Sesame Street finale. That didn't happen. The Sesame Street finale. Oh yeah, that post-apocalyptic nuclear wasteland Sesame Street finale. That was very brave. That was a brave choice. Never would have expected them to go there. The Golden Girls ending until it became the Golden Palace. Oh really? Gonna draw Argent to follow the theme. Yeah, you should, Hardcore Dinosaur. That's a good idea. Monster of the Week was the best on X-Files. Yeah, even in the later seasons, even after Fox Mulder left, there would still be good Monster of the Week episodes. And they always had some really strong guest actors on that show too. Bryan Cranston. We were talking about Breaking Bad. There was a really cool one with Bryan Cranston. I even wonder if that was written by the Breaking Bad showrunner, because didn't he get his start writing on X-Files, now that I think of it? He may have. I'd have to Wikipedia that to be sure. Alright, let me finish up this mask. You guys deserve to have some masky goodness. I mean, in terms of impressions, I did give you that flawless Michael McDonald a little while ago. If I know a Michael McDonald song, I can nail that. What a fool believes. Oh, don't claim me, YouTube. That was parody. I know that sounded perfect, but please. what was that? There was a sketch. I might be showing my age now, but I used to love the sketch comedy show SCTV. And there was a really funny sketch where Rick Moranis played Michael McDonald, specifically making a joke because, like, McDonald would frequently just sort of do backup singing with a lot of different collaborators. And in this one, he's just like, he didn't sing on most of the songs. So, like, the song's going on, you see that they're recording it in a studio somewhere. Michael McDonald is driving, like, a convertible. He gets to the studio, just casually walks in, and it's time for his solo, and he just goes like, ah, and then he just takes off the headphones and leaves, starts driving away, and then, like, realizes, like, oh, he forgot that he's, like, sings a second part, like, rushes back in, like, runs up, puts the headphones on, and then just casually like, ah. It's so funny. Like, he just, I can't remember what song it was. Breaking Bad's showrunner Vince Gilligan got his start on X-Files. Thank you, Daniel. Daniel knows that kind of trivia. Yeah, I watched The Lone Gunmen. It was, oh, and also Michael Edison confirmed it, and Marco confirmed it, and D. Holier. Oh, yeah, Steve asked if I ever watched Fringe. I did, and I liked Fringe. Fringe was good, man. Fringe was underrated. It never quite, like, took off in a big way, but they definitely got enough time to wrap up their whole story, so even if you, like, watch it now, it will have, like, a satisfying conclusion because they got the time they needed to do a final season and, like, wrap everything up, which is pretty awesome. Fringe is very like X-Files in a lot of ways. It's just, instead of, like, being supernatural ever or aliens, it's always, like, man-made science run amok. But it got really, really interesting once they involved parallel realities. That got really interesting. The Lone Gunmen only had one season. Yeah, and it was a bummer, like, after that, they brought the Lone Gunmen back for an episode of X-Files only to blow them all up, which I was like, it's kind of crappy. Why would you do that to, like, really popular characters? Like, you didn't think you'd ever want to use them again? Like, that's weird. That was really weird when they killed off the Lone Gunmen. These beloved, sort of second stringers just felt really short-sighted in a way. Kind of more evidence that they never had clear plans for the future on X-Files, that they were making it all up as they went along, and they just happened to do a really good job for the first 5 seasons or so. Because you could still, like, for about 5 years, you can still keep laying out breadcrumbs that'll, like, lead you somewhere, and you don't have to, like, pay anything off quite yet. You're just like, yeah, in a year or two, we'll be paying it all off, but they clearly had no plans for how they were going to pay off any of that stuff. Oh, well. Ride Like the Wind. Thanks, Jojo. Yeah, it goes like, and I've got such a long way to go. And Michael McDonald goes, such a long way to go. And it's like all it is. And I ride like the wind. And I've got such a long way to go. I can't sing, folks. Even if I can do, like, halfway decent impressions, I've never been able to control my voice for singing. It drives me nuts. Or more than that, it drives my sister nuts. She used to always, like, get so mad at me if I tried to sing. She'd be like, oh. That's, like, what you do. If you're there, Gene, you have to admit that's what you did. Oh, here's some of my other brushes. And I ride like the wind. I kind of like a lot of Michael McDonald stuff, but anybody who's watched Comic Tropes knows that I love Yacht Rock, because all I did was the Hollywood Steve intros for a long time. They weren't using them, and other shows did them, so I was like, hey, this is fair game. I love Yacht Rock. If you've never watched it, like, go to Channel 101. There's so many good shows there, and Yacht Rock is arguably the best. I don't remember doing that. Gene, you used to get so mad at me all the time if I ever tried singing. She'd just go, "You can't sing. You'd always tell me that I can't sing, and you tell me to stop." I remember it, but if you don't, that's fair. This is a pretty simple, like, you know, ninja type character, all things considered, and I think I'm going to just be brave and like start blacking out more of this stuff. Like, you know, I'm not even gonna like go in and give like artificial highlights. I'm just gonna give him more of a matte black. In fact, let me just think. I mean, it's cool that I know where the body is, but yeah, I think that it'll look better without this or this line. I think that looks okay. Who is Grendel? Well, I talked about this when I started, and I'll be making an episode soon about it, so just keep your eye on the Comic Tropes channel, and you will learn about Grendel. Very important indie comics character. Very important. And I've got such a long way to go, such a long way to go, and I ride like the wind. As we know from Yacht Rock, Toto paid Harold Ramis to write that skit. Yeah, sure, I can do that for you, but it'll cost you $10 American. Deal. Grendel was an independent comic, if I remember correctly. Yes, originally it was published by Comico for a few issues, and then it moved over to Dark Horse for most of its life. But it is owned by Matt Wagner ever since 1982. But anyway, just keep your eye out on the Comic Tropes channel. My patrons recently voted on what I should do as my next episode. Small spoiler, you guys get like the exclusive here. The exclusive. I'm making an episode about the history of Grendel. It's pretty interesting stuff, in my opinion. Oh yeah, it is getting a Netflix series. That's true. Is Grendel's mother also named Martha? We don't even know who Grendel's mother is. Is that a Batman v Superman joke? Martha, why did you say that name? It's such a rare name. I can't believe I heard it. Why did you say that? Let's see, I'm getting a text. Let's make sure that I'm not doing anything wrong here. Okay. No, it's not about this. Any Thanksgiving Day plans? Oh, yeah, that's right. We've got Thanksgiving coming up. Well, nothing overly exciting, but my fiance's parents are helping to cook dinner, and they're going to come over, and we're going to have it at our house. All of us are safely vaccinated, so we didn't do anything for Thanksgiving last year, so I'm glad that we'll get to this year. I'm looking forward to doing that. So, how about all of you? Anybody traveling to see any family, or maybe doing something more like Friendsgiving, where you just like, you know, hang out with your friends? Anybody have any unique plans along those lines for Thanksgiving, or maybe cooking something other than turkey? If you're cooking something other than turkey, let me know what you're planning on making. I'd love to hear unique Thanksgiving plans. I saw the All-Star Batman and Robin episode. Good one, Chris. It actually debunked something I thought was true, which was that Frank Miller was recovering from an illness. Well, look, it's always possible he was. He never publicly said that he was. I think we have to take him at his word unless we had evidence from somebody else. You know, I think at this point, if it was purely health concerns, I feel like that would have been hard to keep a secret because of his status. You know, I think a collaborator or, you know, somebody like that would have probably spoken up or let it slip, one or the other. I really do. So if he had health concerns, I don't think that that was the driving factor on All-Star Batman and Robin not being complete. So just tried to do a little more of like a almost an investigative piece for that episode. A lot of people in the comments are more saying things like, whether they liked or hated it, and that's fine. I said I didn't hate it, but maybe I should have made it clear that I also didn't love it. I thought it was fine for what it was, but maybe that's also giving it a lot of credit. I did not love Dark Knight Strikes Again, I will say that. That was the last Batman story Frank Miller had done before that, and I have not felt the need to read things like Dark Knight 3 Master Race. I just don't care anymore. But I really like Ronin and Frank Miller's Daredevil run. So, yeah, I'm not going to turn on him 100% because I do like those things a lot. And I don't know, All-Star Batman and Robin made me kind of laugh. And even if it's unintentional, I did still laugh. So it entertained me on that level, right? That's all I can say. And I've got such a long way to go, such a long way to go. Can you tell what song I got stuck in my head? And I ride like the wind. Frank Miller is a little crazy, and so is Todd McFarlane. Yeah, they probably are. J.K. Rowling has gone nuts too. Yeah, she has. That's disappointing as hell. I don't know. Every once in a while, you just sort of realize that creators are people too, and they're not perfect by any means. And there's a weird line. Some things I think I can forgive and other things I can't. So everybody has their own line. For Thanksgiving, I had East Indian food delivered last month. Ooh, that sounds nice. I've heard Dark Horse makes a bunch of their profits of art books for different franchises, especially video games. I'm sure that they make their profits on pretty much everything they publish for the most part. They've been around a long time. They're not making willy-nilly decisions. I'm sure that all of their books, they solicit it first. They know how many copies they're going to publish. They know if it's going to be profitable or not. So, but in terms of their big profits, I'm sure that art books probably are more cost-friendly than all the talent that's involved in a full comic book. I bet that's true. Da 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 da. I think that people are talking about Dark Horse getting the license back for Star Wars. Just to be clear, though, it's only a partial license. Marvel's still doing, all the main titles, Star Wars and Darth Vader and this, that, and the other. My understanding is Dark Horse is going to be doing some of the more young adult and kid-friendly type books for it. As to why it's necessary to involve another publisher, I don't really know. That does seem a little odd to me. But, yeah, whatever. Star Wars is a pretty big license. I'm sure there's plenty of it to go around. Let's use the kneaded eraser to clean up some of the pencil markings here that aren't really needed anymore. Will I do a Marvel Team-Up 1970s run? Yeah, maybe. I think, Steve, that the Grendel Omnibus is still in active print. I'm pretty sure. And the Omnibus is definitely your best bet for, like, reading Grendel, because it's a pretty big story, but the Omnibus is a great starting point. I'll double check on that, but I'm pretty sure the Omnibus is still in print. If for any reason it isn't, I bet it will be any day now, just because of, like, yeah, the upcoming Netflix adaptation. I watched the first episode of the Netflix adaptation of Cowboy Bebop. The first episode was fine. I don't think that there's a way for the live action to necessarily compete with how good the anime was. I would consider Cowboy Bebop, in my book, to be a top tier anime. Like, just one of the best, you know? Good animation, good score, good voice acting, even the dubs. And it all, you know, comes to a definitive conclusion. So it tells a full, complete story. Something you don't always get in some of these. It's not that much either, you know? It's like one season and a movie that fits in between. That's not a lot. I think it's a worthwhile enough thing to do an adaptation of it, just as a different take on it. I don't expect it to really improve anywhere. I would say that the strongest aspect of it is definitely John Cho. He's a good actor, so, you know, I like his take on Spike. I like that. But we'll see. Like I say, only seen one episode. Could go downhill for all I know. We'll see. YouTube has now started hiding the dislikes during this week. Yeah, you can still hit the dislike button on things, but it's not going to show you the count of dislikes. Instead, what it does is if you hit dislike, YouTube just says, okay, you're not interested in that content. We won't show you anymore. So keep in mind, if you were watching one of my videos and you just didn't like the topic and you were inclined to hit dislike, just so you know, what you'd really be doing would be, you know, like possibly preventing yourself from ever getting alerts that I've made a new episode about anything. So definitely would appreciate the likes, and would also sincerely appreciate if you considered not hitting the dislike button, because that just tells the algorithm at this point, oh, okay, you don't want to see any more by this creator? No worries, you won't. Sort of a quiet way to hide that content from you. Most live action versions of anime are just laughable. What other live action versions have there been of anime? Because you're right, I don't think that there's been really a good adaptation yet in America. There have been adaptations of manga, but that's different. I mean, Dragon Ball, that was pretty notorious. I never saw it, but I know that did not go over well. What else? What else did they adapt from anime into live action? Oh, Pokemon. But Pokemon actually did well, so that's not a great example. I wouldn't be surprised if you see more live action Pokemon at some point, whether you liked it or not. Yeah, Death Note. But Death Note was originally a manga. That's why I said, like, there have been live action adaptations of that. And I personally liked the Japanese 2-movie series of Death Note quite a bit, for whatever that's worth. There's a lot made in Japan. Right. Yeah, there was 20th Century Boys was made into a live action movie. I'm sure there's plenty. Golgo 13 was made into a movie. don't think Astro Boy's been made into a live action movie. That would be interesting. I wonder if that would work. Probably not. Probably not. Ignore me. But I did like Death Note. I did like the Japanese 2-movie version of Death Note. Not the TV show or anything. I'm talking the live action 2 movie. Full Metal Alchemist was live action? Huh. I mean, you could say The Last Airbender, but for the record, like, Last Airbender wasn't anime. I mean, it was American animation done in a different, like, style, but it wasn't Japanese anime, so we're sort of like, you know, splitting hairs, I know, but technically it wasn't an anime. Oh, Ghost in the Shell. That's right. Ghost in the Shell. Whoop, never tried that one. That one got like enough bad publicity that I was like, nah, that's all right. I'm good. Are you keeping up with Asadora? Absolutely. I love that comic. That is like my favorite book just about right now. It's fantastic. It's so good. So good. Asadora. One of my highest recommendations for things that are out these days. A live action Prison School, huh? I've never seen that one, so I don't know Prison School. But yeah, some things just like I don't think it's hard to say. It's ultimately down to like, you know, the creative team involved as to how well they can adapt something. And I've got such a long way to go. Prison School is excellent. Was Alita Battle Angel based on an anime? It was an anime, but I don't know. Was that a manga first? Actually, I don't know. That's a good one. That's a good point, because honestly, like, that movie wasn't that bad. I saw that on a plane. I had never intended to see Alita Battle Angel. I thought the previews for it looked quite weird, but I watched it on a plane, and I didn't think that one was too bad. I really didn't. Maybe that's damning it with faint praise by saying I didn't think it was too bad. I thought it was pretty good. I was surprised. I think they must have toned those eyes down a little, like right before they released it, because I sort of remember the trailers really weirding me out, and in the movie I didn't really feel weirded out the same way. So they must have like toned it down a little at least. Those weird robot manga eyes. This is one of the cool things you can do with these. If you look, like it's blending it a bit. I like that. Did Alita Battle Angel not do well? I didn't know that. You know what's hard to say? Worcester. Is Worcester hard to say? Worcester. I've flipped through Chainsaw Man and Jujutsu Kaisen at the bookstore, but I haven't actually sat down and read it. I don't know. Is that something that people recommend? Is that a good book? I don't know. Let me see if... Oh, that's interesting. This marker won't quite make the right color on top of the whiteout area. You'd have to fix that in Photoshop, or get a different way to color it. it won't really take it on top of the whiteout. Looks muddy. Are you a fan of Lone Wolf and Cub? Yeah, I think I could say that. I think that Lone Wolf and Cub is pretty great. That's definitely something I could cover someday. Maybe even cover that it was one of the first, mangas to really be translated and adapted for American audiences. That could be an interesting story to go into at some point, for sure. Looking for a color. I've got sort of my colors spread out here. There it is. There's some interesting stuff going on in this discussion. Like, if you're watching this, like, look at the chat. People are talking about all sorts of different manga and adaptations and stuff. Pretty cool, bro. Pretty cool. Man, I am itching to go on a trip. I specifically would really like to get back to Japan. You guys got me thinking about it. But it still would require a 10-day quarantine right now, and I don't have the vacation time to afford to just go and do nothing for 10 days. Like, that is just... Nope. If they can get it down to, like... No, I can't deal with any real quarantine. Like, if they will accept my Vax card, and even if they require me to take a test, before and after, that's totally understandable, but I just don't have... I can't afford to use up vacation time on any quarantine. And they're welcome to do that if that helps them stay safe and healthy. But, yeah, so that's the first place I think I'll go once they allow us to travel. Is I want to go to Japan again. I will talk about Stan Sakai at some point. Yeah, or Usagi Yojimbo. I have a specific Usagi Yojimbo arc that I want to discuss. So that will happen at some point. Be patient. I have to vary up my content doing this. If I wanted to do just the stuff that interested me exclusively, you'd be seeing stuff like Usagi Yojimbo and Grendel a little bit more, but that's just not going to get watched by as many people. So every once in a while I have to talk about, a popular creator, maybe a newer one that people will recognize, or maybe talk about, a Batman or a Spider-Man story. I just have to, in order to keep engaging, new audiences, and then hopefully I can, introduce them to some new stuff that maybe they hadn't heard of in comics before. That would make me feel good. It seems to be the way the channel goes. People are like, oh, I've never heard about this, but you made it sound interesting. I'm going to go pick it up. Like, that's a good feeling to, think that I'm helping introduce people to some comics that they otherwise might not have thought to check out. Just such a great medium. I love the storytelling medium of comics, that's for sure. That's for dang sure. Let's see, what else is being asked? Somebody chewed up your Usagi Yojimbo comics. That sucks, man. I'm sorry. I had planned to go to Japan a couple of years ago, then my travel buddy passed. Oh, that's too bad. Yeah. Last time I went was exactly 2 years ago, now that I think of it, because I was there for Thanksgiving 2 years ago. We did Thanksgiving in Japan. It was fun. We had a great trip. That was when I got to record in YouTube Studios. I made my Akira video, which still bums me out that isn't one of my more watched videos. I was really proud of that one because that was a lot to read, to distill it and talk about what it was about, but it did okay. It just, I was always hoping it would do a little better than just okay. It just sort of shows that not everybody reads manga. Like, my manga episodes don't always get as many views. That's just the way it is. Do you like any of the new Ninja Turtle comics? Yeah, the IDW stuff is great. I'm not quite up to date on it, but everything I read by it was good. I learned a lot of stuff about comics from your channel. I started reading Frank Miller's work in the Mirage Comics Ninja Turtles because of your videos. Well, that's awesome to hear. That's some stuff that I loved growing up, so hopefully you got something out of it too. That's really exciting to hear. Thanks. Thanks for that. You know, I think that's about everything I want to do for this particular piece. At some point, I got to get a better camera so that you guys can see this in sharper resolution. I'll post this to my Instagram and Twitter feeds, and you might get to see it in a little bit better detail there. But I think that's about what I'm going to do. But I'll still take a question or two, because this was pretty quick. Let's see. What else is being discussed? They were supposed to do a live-action Akira, but right now it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Last I heard, Taika Waititi is still attached to direct it, but I don't know. We'll see. That's what I heard last. Akira doesn't need a remake. Well, that's true. Certainly doesn't need an animated remake. Well, let me take that back. If it was done by the same people or with the same level of care and could be expanded, because the story of Akira is much bigger than what the movie was able to do. Like, the movie is great in terms of its animation quality, and tone and stuff like that, but technically it was a very abbreviated version of the manga. Certainly my video on Akira, plug, can sort of give you some insight into that. Yeah. Let's say I'm looking and seeing what kind of comic book news there was this past week. A trailer for the next season of One Piece, I guess. Talking about the guy playing Swordsman. Okay, I guess Swordsman is in Hawkeye, maybe. That's my guess why they'd be talking about him. Some cosplay stuff. People's reaction to the Spider-Man trailer. Comic-Con Blood Drive returns for 2021 special edition. Okay, well, that sounds positive, I guess. Got to be careful with that stuff. Oh, look at this. This is interesting. Nocterra series based on the Image Comics title in the works at Netflix. That was fast. There's only been 6 issues so far of Nocterra. I did talk that one up quite a bit to anyone that would listen. I like Nocterra. I thought it was a really cool sci-fi premise. I could see how it could work, actually, as an adaptation for TV because, yeah, it sort of involves more like, truckers and vampires type sci-fi than like anything that's like too big or weird. Chris, did you know they are working on an anime adaptation of the manga Straight Up? It was to be released in 2020 but got sidetracked due to 2020. No, I didn't know anything about that. Do a J. Jonah Jameson impression. That's one you'd probably have to practice for because he talks real gruff, but he also talks real fast. I want photos of Spider-Man. Actually, that kind of hurts my voice to try to do that. I always liked J.K. Simmons, who played famously J. Jonah Jameson in the original Sam Raimi trilogy. He was fantastic, by the way. Just fantastic. He played a Jonah Jameson-like character once on The Simpsons. And he goes like, I want pictures of Spider-Man. And the kid goes, but we're a poetry magazine. He goes, then I want poems about Spider-Man. And I want it to be in the following stanza. A-B-B-C-A-A-B-B-A. It's like, I want that rhyme scheme. And I want it today. And by today, I mean yesterday. And by yesterday, I mean you're already late and you're fired. It was pretty damn good if you haven't seen it. I stuttered that out, but yeah. Explain that to me. 6 issues of Noctera into a series? Well, to be clear, it's going to have more issues. Like, there's definitely more to the world. But, you know, there have been things that have been adapted simultaneously. So, yeah, I mean, Game of Thrones went past the books. As many people told me in a recent video where I mentioned the Jack Kirby adaptation of 2001, they were like, the book and the movie were developed simultaneously. So I was like, okay, fair enough. J. Jonah Jameson was based on Stan Lee. Okay. Do you read any novels? Yeah. Not as much as I used to, that's for sure. These days, you know, we've got our phones, right? Like, so easy to, like, just read from our phones. And it's sort of a dangerous addiction. When I used to commute to into Boston, when I was just out of college and I was working in Boston, I would ride on the T, that's our subway, and I would read, like, you know, a book every couple days, because I would just, like, you know, have at least 30 minutes where I was on the T. And I just read. I just stand and read. So, yeah. What else? Anything else for news? That's interesting, though. That's being adapted so quickly. I mean, I bet Berserker by Keanu Reeves is probably being adapted too, right? And that's only had like 4 or 5 issues come out. Just mostly, every time I look up comic book news, it's like all like movie stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's news, but I'd rather hear about like what creators are doing, what publishers are doing, what conventions are doing, you know, other kinds of merchandise. Not really seeing anything other than like, yeah, reviews of comics and speculation on movies and stuff like that. Well, can't really find any other news to comment on then for now. That's too bad. Oh, I know one other thing, though, that I did hear about earlier this week. I posted it on Twitter. They're looking into potentially adapting Gru, the Wanderer, into an animated series. That sounds great to me. Gru is a hilarious comic. I made an episode talking about how funny I think it is, how great I think the artwork is. And I would love an adaptation of that. I think Gru would be really, really well. Really, really good. Really well. Do an Owen Wilson impression. Wow, gee. Aw. Steve Ditko purposely drew J. Jonah Jameson to look like Adolf Hitler. I never heard that. Ever thought about covering Bill Finger? I have, but there was a really good documentary about him like a couple years ago, so I sort of feel like, what could I talk about that hasn't already been covered? I don't really want to just repeat stuff. Thanks for coming, James. Thanks for stopping by. Let's see. Yeah, and people are talking about the documentary. It's on Hulu. I back the Berserker Kickstarter. I should be getting the 4 volumes relatively soon. That's good. Late to the show, do you come to Canadian Comic-Cons? I am going to Vancouver early next year. I have, just to Vancouver, because Vancouver's only about, like, I don't know, like maybe a 3-hour drive from me. About 3 hours usually, as long as traffic's good. But obviously a little more complex these days, and you know, I am vaccinated, but you know, you have to like prove that to the country you're visiting, so it's not as easy. I would consider going to Vancouver for if it was like, if the convention looked really, really good, because I do have a really great friend, Randy, that lives in Vancouver, and I love seeing him. And I like Vancouver. I think it's a great city. I like Vancouver. I like Toronto. I think they're really great cities. I like Canada. They've got good food. People, like, maybe this is like a cliche, but super friendly. Yeah, I would consider it. It would have to just be a really good convention with some really good guests or publishers or something like that to make it worth this sort of extra hassle of crossing into a foreign country and all. John Leguizamo is apparently coming out with a comic. It's already out. Something, I think it's called Phenom X. The first issue is out in stores. I was not planning on reviewing it. I flipped through it. I thought it looked pretty average, I have to say. Gru was a parody of Conan the Barbarian. Sort of. Not explicitly, though. More a satire of all sorts of sword and sandal type stuff. Not just an explicit parody of Conan. For that, I'd say the early issues of Cerebus. The early issues of Cerebus were an explicit parody of Conan. I'd like to try poutine. Poutine's great. You can find it in America too, but yeah, it tends to be much more common up in Canada. Love poutine. Poutine can be done so well. Grendel is such a simple costume design. Yeah, and sometimes Hunter Rose would even just put on the mask, but like be wearing like a black and white tuxedo as well. But it's really just a jumpsuit. It's nothing fancier than that. Might see you there, eh? Well, I don't know which convention you're talking about specifically, but I'd look it up and consider it, yeah. The next convention I plan on going to, I am going to go on Saturday, not this Saturday, but like real soon, for the Saturday of Emerald City Comic-Con. I'm taking a look at my my own schedule. Looks like that is December 4th. And we are already on the 22nd, so that's a week and a half. I'll be going to a convention for a day. I'm looking forward to that. But I feel like good, because I did get that COVID booster this past week, and you do have to show your vaccination card to get into that convention. So I feel pretty safe about that overall. It's in my own backyard, so I'm not really traveling or anything like that. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to the Seattle Emerald City Comic-Con for Saturday. Doesn't look like they have tons of guests, to be fair, but hopefully it's a good one. If any of you out there happen to be going to that convention and you see me, again, I'm going Saturday. Please feel free to stop me if you want to say anything, like, because you might recognize me, but I wouldn't recognize you, you know. So, but I don't mind if people stop me, and I'm leaning towards thinking I might wear this tracksuit. Sort of go as like one of the tracksuit mafia from Hawkeye, because of course that's coming out this week. So maybe that's what I'll wear to the convention. Like, that'll be sort of light cosplay. That's what I'm leaning towards. We'll see. Hardcore Dinosaur drew an Argent piece. Okay, I'll take a look. They still have conventions? Oh yeah, they had both San Diego and New York Comic-Con big conventions this year. Favorite fictional weapon that would be really impractical in real life. Really impractical. Maybe Wonder Woman's lasso of truth. I don't know if I want to hear everybody tell the truth. I'll say hi if I'm able to go. Yeah, good luck. You avoid crowds. Don't blame you. I tend to try to minimize my risk. I don't go out much anymore. It bothers me, to be honest. But what can you do? You know, gotta be safe. But I feel overall pretty good about going to the Emerald City Comic-Con, since you have to prove that you're vaccinated, and I am, and I'm freshly boosted. I feel pretty good about going, just for one day. And yeah, hopefully I see some interesting comics there that can make some good topics for shows. I don't know if there's anything I would be like. I might try to sort of do some light vlogging about the convention for this channel, like do an episode just about like, hey, this is what it's like to go to a convention today. So I'm gonna see if I can find. I've got a gimbal and like a power pack for like, you know, just running my iPhone as my recording device, and so I might do that. I might like be vlogging a little bit at the convention, just sort of show you what kind of turnout there is, what kind of things there are to do, get a sense of that. I go to the movies because in my town you also have to provide your vaccination card each time you go in, so I feel pretty safe about that. Like if you know you have to show that, I feel pretty good about that. Anyway, fun conversation, folks. I'll be back next week with reviews of what I've read. I'll be back with something else to draw, and I'll try to like maybe like bullet point some news of the week as it comes this week, so that we have some topics that I can easily talk about. Because if I've got something to talk about, I feel like I can riff, and otherwise, you know, I'm just sort of like almost struggling for what to talk about. But it was really fun today. I had a great time with everybody. I hope you had a good time just chatting with each other and with me about comics. And a convention in Germany. I would love to visit Germany. I wonder how much... does Germany currently have a quarantine for visitors? Or if you prove that you're vaccinated, can you just visit? Because if you can just show your vaccination card and not quarantine, I'd consider going to like Germany almost right away. Anyway, we'll see. Good talking to everybody. I had a great time. I'll see you in a week. You'll see me sooner because there'll be a Comic Tropes this weekend. And I'm going to try to have a really special video for you on this channel on Thanksgiving morning. So that's a day most of us have off. There'll be probably a little time to kill at some point. I'll have a little extra content for you, something just fun for you to watch. So I think you'll like it.